Hello everybody. So I titled this video What Eckhart Tolle Won't Tell You. It's a catchy title. Hopefully people will watch this video because they'll be curious, but really this video is about that. I'd like to first start off by saying that I really do agree with Eckhart Tolle on a lot of things, and I really like Eckhart Tolle. I've read his books, I've watched hours of his talks. I was a big fan for a while. I took a little bit of a turn in my journey, but he's brilliant, and what he talks about is true, and it's very helpful to hundreds of thousands of people, and he's very popular. So I think it's great that a man of his wisdom has that broad of a reach, partly thanks to Oprah, but partly because he has a very universal message where he's a sort of perennial philosophy, which I think is good, and I believe in the perennial philosophy too, that within every tradition, if you look at the essence of what the person who conceived of the religion, who is at the heart of the religion, was trying to teach, is the same message, a message of inner peace, of inner quiet, of inner stillness, and that Buddhism and Christianity and Islam and the Sufi mystics in Islam and I think Plato and even probably Druids and every religion, I think there were people that were aware of a sort of inner state of calm and peace and stillness, which went beyond the ego that they discovered, that they tried to teach to other people. And then things did get muddled up, and wars were fought over who's right and who's wrong. Our God's right, your God's wrong. And so a lot of bad things have happened as a result of dogmas and things like that. So I really like Eckhart Tolle's ability to talk very universally about a state of inner peace, of inner calm that's beyond the ego, that he's pointing people to, because people get caught up in their idea of God. Or their beliefs. I believe the right thing, therefore I'm in the right, you're in the wrong, as if that's the point of religion itself or philosophy itself, is to believe the right things over and against other people who believe the wrong things. And if you believe the right things, then you're safe, you'll go to heaven. And if you believe the wrong things, you're going to go to hell, or you're on the wrong track. So that's not what any religion, I think at its heart, was meant to be talking about originally. I think it was pointing to this place of inner calm, inner peace, a sort of an awakened state. In Buddhism, you call it enlightenment. I guess in Christianity and Islam, they don't really talk too much about in terms of enlightenment, but they do become in union with God. So in Christianity, they talk about becoming in union with God. In Hinduism, it's the same thing. It's sort of like in union with God, or enlightenment, moksha, as they call it in Hinduism. So it's really good that Eckhart Tolle directed people back to what it's really essentially about. And he talks so he says some people call it the Tao, some people call it Buddha nature, some people call it God, some people call it Allah, some people call it the way, or the divine, or there's many terms for it, but it's all coming down to the same thing. So I agree with him on that, and I disagree with him on that. And I'll sort of get more into what I disagree with him about later in the video. But first, I'd like to talk about what I agree with him about. So what I agree with Eckhart Tolle about is that within us, all of us, is the same thing, a state of inner calm, inner stillness, of inner love that isn't grasped by the mind. It's a non-conceptual wisdom it's a felt beingness, as Eckhart Tolle says. It's something you feel in your essence. You feel at your essence a state of stillness and calm and well-being. And that becomes a new reference point for where you take your sense of self from. So you say, first, my name's Eddie. So before I'm Eddie, before I'm a man, before I'm an American, before I'm I like this and I like that, and these are my interests, and this is my personal history, and this is my past, and that defines who I am. Before any of that, there's a state of inner stillness that's within all of us. And a lot of people don't see it, and it does cause all the misery in the world, because people take their identity through their mind. They cling to the thoughts in their mind. They follow after the thoughts in their mind. And their mind dictates to them who they are, if they're successful, if they're a failure, if they're a good husband, a bad husband, if they're in the right, if they're in the wrong, if they're a Democrat or a Republican. And it's sort of like a resume. their ego is a construct of many ideas they have about themselves through their personal history and the ways they define themselves through the mind. And then their mind is like always active, and they're lost in the, Eckhart Tolle is always saying, you're lost in the mind and the thoughts, and you think, your thoughts are going this way and that way, and you're in a good mood, you're in a bad mood, you're depressed, you're anxious, you're tired, you're hyper, you're stressed out, you're you're in a, so different states that you gain, you sort of like are trapped in the mind essentially, and the mind creates a false clinging to a sense of self, like a solid self in here that's not that stillness, that's sort of like me inside. I am my body, I am this person, and I get mad if you insult me and things like that, because we're taking all the directives through our self-definitions, which we gain through being attached and consumed by the thoughts in our mind. So all these things I think are very true, and that really is at the heart of every religion. And if we could all go beyond the mind and the thoughts in our mind and have a sense of inner spaciousness and stillness where thoughts are allowed to be there, they're allowed to arise and fall, and we're allowed to have our likes and dislikes. Like, I like sushi, I like long walks on the beach, like, people fill out their dating profiles. I like to go out to pubs and drink with my friends and have a good time, and I like to go to the movies, and I'm a traveler, I like to travel. So these things are good. You can like travel, you can like movies, you can like certain foods over and against other foods. And it's okay to have those personal preferences and things about yourself that are different than other people. But to gain your sense of self through those things, to define yourself through those things, is where suffering comes from. So all suffering comes from a false self clinging to a false self that is gained through a following after and believing in our thoughts in our mind. So that is very true. And every religion, I think, and everyone in every religion, the great mystics or enlightened people, have discovered a place of felt inner beingness, an inner spaciousness, a sort of backdrop of stillness. In the Bible it says, "Be still and know that I am God." So that references stillness, or God is love. So it's a non-dual state, a non-conceptual felt state of well-being and happiness. And so that's all true, and that's what Eckhart Tolle is pointing to. And I have myself a sense of that, sort of an inner place of spaciousness, of stillness, in which the world arises, and you can operate and function in the world, and you can make jokes, and you can talk to people on the phone, and it doesn't always have to be about spiritual things, and you can just sort of like be a person and be lighthearted about life. You don't always have to talk about spiritual things. And where am I going with that? It's okay to be just like a person who just sort of lives their life and doesn't think too heavy all the time. But all that stuff arises in a sense of inner stillness. Another word for it is pure awareness. So we're aware of everything that arises from a still place. So everything arises in awareness, and we're that center of awareness in which everything arises, and we spontaneously cognize the world as it arises and as it dissolves, and everything changes. As the Buddha said, everything is change, and it comes and it goes, and to let things come and to let things go. And that's sort of like the Tao, to sort of be at one with the Tao, let things come and go in the Tao. So yes, I have a certain sense of that too, but I took a little direction away from Eckhart Tolle, and in some sense because I believe in God. And so Eckhart Tolle steers away from talking about God. He says some people call it Buddha nature, some people call it the Tao, some people call it God, some people call it Allah. So he sort of says that it's all just this sort of inner stillness, this pervasive pure awareness, pure stillness and spaciousness that sort of runs through all things, and it's like this energy of happiness and joy that sort of pervades through all things, and you can call that God if you want. Well, the one where I sort of disagree with him and where he doesn't go is I'm Christian, so as a Christian, you believe God is also a personal God. So be still and know that I am God. Yes, God is stillness, God is love, but God is also a person who created you, who knows who you are, who's involved in every bit of your life, who's, in the Bible it says, who can count every hair on your head, or every hair that used to be on your head in my case. So God who's intimately involved in every detail of your life. So it's very, on one hand, from a Christian perspective, it's very much the same, what Eckhart Tolle says. When you become in touch with God, you become in touch with beingness itself, your inner being. And you gain your inner beingness from God's beingness, and God is beingness itself. And God is awareness itself. And God is, so God is like the ultimate being, and we are created in the likeness and image of God. So we are similar to God in the sense that within us is stillness, within us is awareness, pure awareness. We create, and in fact God creates through us. So God is intimately involved and intertwined in our thought processes and our personalities and our skills and our talents and the direction our life is headed. And so it's different from Eckhart Tolle, because he sort of says, well, you can call it Buddha nature or you can call it God. And it's almost like this pantheistic definition of like the Force in Star Wars. Like the Force is in everything, and become at one with the Force, the Tao, the Buddha nature, or God. He steers away from referring to God as a personal creator God. Sorry, my thing glitched for a second. A personal creator God who created you, who created me, who created the world, and wants to draw him back to himself. So this might come as a relief to some of you who are like, oh wow, this is new, because Eckhart Tolle, he sort of says, if I connect with the inner stillness, then I'll become enlightened. I'll go beyond my ego. So find this inner stillness. Find this okay, where's the inner stillness? Okay, meditate. Okay, think about it. Breathe, follow your breath. Okay, where's that inner stillness? So that's good to sort of look for the inner stillness, but if it's a relief, because if you believe in God and God's a personal God who loves you and wants to help you, you can pray to God, God, show me yourself, reveal to me your stillness, your peace. I want to be at one with you, God, please help me. So that way you have help from a personal, loving God who cares about you. So you can get very dry in Buddhism and Eckhart Tolle, where you're sort of self-absorbed into trying to find the inner quiet, the inner still point, as they call it in Zen, the still point. I'm going to wrap this video up because I'm running out of batteries. But if you are sort of frustrated and you're trying to follow along with what they say in Buddhism and Eckhart Tolle and seek enlightenment, well, it might come as a relief to some of you that you can ask God for help. And that's what all the great mystics did. They said, God, like, make my heart like unto thine, or God, my soul is restless until I rest in you. And God is not an impersonal bliss force that runs through everything. He is that. He is a blissfulness that runs through everything. But he's also an aware, awakened being. He is awakened beingness itself. And so you can find your identity in God, and that goes beyond the ego. That finds the inner stillness. That is the backdrop of awareness and stillness that thoughts arise in, that help you disengage from identification with thoughts. So it's very similar, but I can also see some of you cringing, saying, oh no, he's talking about God. Like, this is why I hate religion. I don't like to think about God. I just call it inner peace, inner stillness, the Tao. It's something like a force that runs through everything. Don't talk about God, because then it's Allah versus Jesus versus. So God is like a dirty word, and even Eckhart Tolle says that God's become a bit of a hot button word, a hot sort of dirty word. So he stays away from it. So again, that's where I agree with Eckhart Tolle. Where I disagree with Eckhart Tolle. If any of you find any sort of like relief from this, you can pray to God. So with words, you can say, God, please help me with my job. Please help me figure out what I need to do with my life. Please bring me to you. Please help me go beyond my ego. You can petition God. You can talk to God. God can talk to you. He talks in the Bible. He says, this is my son in whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him. Or he talks several times, in the Old Testament he's always talking. So God can talk. He can literally talk to you, and people hear God talking to them. So God is a personal being who can guide you, can help you, and bring you to himself, which will bring you beyond sin and ego and restore you to your original nature, the nature we had before we fell from the Garden of Eden, where we were in union with God. So we can become in union with God. So this is the path that I've sort of found that is, it's helpful because now I believe in God and I have a personal sense of my relationship with God. And it's the God of the Bible, the creator God. So in Hinduism they have God Brahma, but God Brahma is sort of like runs through all things, and he's not really like a personal God that knows you and loves you and wants you to come in union with him and can count every hair on your head. It's a different sense of God, but nonetheless God. So I'm not dogging Hinduism, their God's bad or Allah's bad, but I'm sort of talking about the God of the Bible, the personal creator God. So again, and if any of you found this sort of irritating to talk about God or the Christian God is better than Eckhart Tolle or something like that, I just want to say that it's okay. You don't have to believe in God like necessarily to find inner happiness. You can sort of find inner stillness and peace sort of the way the Buddha discovered it. I don't know, it's just there. Inner peace and stillness and emptiness is just there. It pervades through all things. I don't know, God doesn't show up, so I don't know about God. He didn't really say yes or no about God. He just said, I've found a way out of suffering. A way, so this is a way that works. So that does work. You can find sort of the pantheistic peacefulness that runs through all things and go beyond your ego if you can connect with that. That's good. But I would just say it's incomplete because you're leaving out God who created you and all that stuff. So hopefully maybe there's some frustrated Eckhart Tolle people, or people are into Ajashanti, or many gurus like Muji and stuff, where they sort of talk about the inner state of peacefulness and bliss that goes beyond the ego, but they don't quite talk about a personal God who you can pray to and ask for help, who cares about you and cares about your family and friends and everyone. And so you can start maybe praying to God and asking for help on your spiritual journey, as opposed to just this dry seeking the inner spaciousness. I just need to find the inner spaciousness. Me. Just find this inner spaciousness. There's no other person helping me do this. So maybe you can sort of think, okay, well maybe I can pray to God, ask for some help on this spiritual quest, because it's quite hard and frustrating. But again, if I'm not trying to make any waves, my God's better than every other God. It's just a Christian perspective. I think people lose sight of, they sort of think God is like Buddha nature, or it's like this same thing that runs through all traditions, when it is different from tradition to tradition. Technically, Taoism is different than Buddhism, it's different than Islam, it's different than Hinduism. There are fundamental differences between these traditions, which are not just fighting points. There are just some distinctions, which Eckhart Tolle avoids altogether. And again, I like Eckhart Tolle, and I like all these sort of YouTube gurus. They're great, and they offer lots of wisdom, and I wish you well on your path, and I hope you found this video helpful. Okay, blessings.